The rain on Theta-7 wasn't water. It was ammonia-laced sleet that could strip paint from hull plating, and it fell in sheets across the research outpost's reinforced windows. Dr. Lena Hart watched the storm from her lab, coffee growing cold in her hands when she heard the scratching. It was faint, almost lost beneath the howl of wind, but persistent. Claws on metal. Something desperate. The other researchers had already sealed themselves in their quarters for the night. The standing order was clear. Never open exterior doors during a storm. The native predators of Theta-7 were apex killers, 400-pound monsters with serrated teeth and hunting instincts that had evolved over millions of years in this hostile world. But Lena had never been good at following orders when something was suffering. She cycled through the airlock alone, emergency poncho doing little against the acidic rain. The scratching came from behind a cargo container, and when she rounded the corner, her helmet light caught two enormous eyes reflecting back at her, golden and terrified. The creature was small. Too small. A Kaveth cub no bigger than a terrier huddled against the container with its fur matted and smoking slightly from the rain. Its mother was nowhere in sight. On Theta-7, that meant only one thing. The cub was already dead, it just didn't know it yet. "Hey there," Lena whispered, though the cub couldn't hear her through the helmet. She knelt slowly, making herself smaller. "You're okay. You're going to be okay." The cub, she would later name him Karen, hissed and bared tiny fangs. But his body was shaking so hard he could barely stand. Lena didn't think. She just moved, scooping the cub into her arms and running for the airlock. He struggled at first, claws catching in her poncho, but exhaustion won quickly. By the time the inner door cycled open, Karen had gone limp against her chest. Still breathing, but barely. The other researchers thought she was insane. "That's a Kaveth," Dr. Yamoto had said, staring at the cub now wrapped in heated blankets on Lena's bunk. "In 6 months, it'll be big enough to bite your head off." "In 6 months, we'll figure something out," Lena replied, not looking up from the medical scanner. Right now, he's hypothermic and starving. She spent that first night on the floor beside her bed, watching Karen's shallow breathing gradually deepen. She'd synthesized a protein mixture based on Kaveth biology scans, mostly raw meat analogs with mineral supplements. The cub had eaten ravenously, then promptly vomited it all up. The second attempt with smaller portions had stayed down. Around 0300 hours, she felt something touch her hand. Karen had dragged himself to the edge of the bed, one small paw extended. His golden eyes were open, watching her with an intelligence that made her breath catch. "Hey, buddy," she whispered. "Feeling better?" The cub made a sound, not quite a purr, deeper and more resonant. Then he did something that would change everything. He climbed down from the bed and curled up against Lena's side, his warm bulk pressing against her ribs. For the first time since his mother had died, Karen felt safe. Humans, the galaxy had learned, were strange. They came from a death world where everything, the gravity, the weather, the microbiology, tried to kill them constantly. They'd evolved as endurance hunters, capable of tracking prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. They'd climbed to the top of their food chain through sheer bloody-minded persistence. But they were also, inexplicably, soft. They bonded with anything: dogs, cats, birds, fish, even plants. If it was alive and showed the slightest hint of consciousness, humans would try to domesticate it, befriend it, or at minimum keep it from harm. The galaxy found this tendency baffling and occasionally dangerous. Karen found it miraculous. Over the following weeks, he grew. Not as quickly as he would have in the wild, but steadily. Lena modified her quarters, adding climbing structures and scratching posts. She programmed the food synthesizer with a dozen different Kaveth-appropriate meals. She read him research papers in the evening. Her own voice seemed to calm him and let him sleep at the foot of her bed. Then, one night, Karen climbed higher. Lena woke to find 40 pounds of alien predator curled against her chest, his massive head tucked under her chin, purring like a fusion reactor. His claws, now as long as her fingers, were carefully retracted. His fangs, capable of shearing through bone, were hidden behind closed lips. She should have been terrified. Every instinct screamed danger. Instead, she wrapped her arms around him and went back to sleep. 6 months passed. Then a year. Karen grew to his full size, nearly 300 pounds of muscle, fang, and claw. The other researchers gave him a wide berth, and visiting officials from the Colonial Science Council strongly suggested Lena return him to the wild. She just smiled and said, "You tell him that," because Karen had no intention of leaving. Every evening, when Lena finished her work, he'd be waiting at the door to her quarters. Every night he'd leap onto the bed, now reinforced to handle his weight, and curl around her like a living fortress. When she was stressed, he'd rest his huge head on her lap. When she was sick, he'd refuse to leave her side, growling at anyone who came too close. The galaxy had been right about humans, Lena realized. They did bond with anything. But what the galaxy hadn't understood was that sometimes on the right worlds with the right human, the bonding went both ways. Karen had been a lost cub dying in the acid rain, waiting for the end. Then he'd found something warmer than any fur, stronger than any armor, the simple, inexplicable kindness of a human who refused to let him die alone. He'd found Dr. Lena Hart's bed and her heart, and he would never, ever leave. Years later, when other researchers asked Lena why she'd risked her life for a predator, she'd smile and scratch behind Karen's ears. "Because that's what humans do," she'd say simply. "We see something afraid and alone, and we can't help ourselves. We bring it home." And Karen, the apex predator who'd chosen a human bed over the wild, would purr his agreement. Some bonds, after all, transcend species. Some warmth is worth any risk.